Hello and welcome to the Cup of Triathlon podcast. We're brought to you every week by our sponsors, raceforce.co.uk, myprotein.com and oxygenetic.com triathlon coaching. I'm hoping now on the other end of the line is the wonderful Helen Murray. Helen, tell me you're there.
Hi, Rob. Yep, I'm here.
Oh, don't do that to me. Listeners, this is like take 5. Helen, I think I might have had my headset switched off.
Well done. How did you turn your headset off?
There's a little switch on it, and I don't know. I turned it off and on again, and I was thinking I was being clever. I went hardwired into the internet, and the minute I did that, the sound stopped working. So whether it was just one of those things, and I don't know.
Provided for a little bit of frustrated entertainment.
Anyway, hi listeners, how you doing? Welcome to the week. Welcome back. Helen, how have you been, my friend?
Oh, Rob, I've been all right actually. In fact, I've had a good morning so far today because I think today, I think Ironman training has commenced right today.
It's kicked in.
It has kicked in today.
We spoke, you were carrying some worries about injuries and niggles and stuff, and you've been for a run and it's been pain free, and that takes some weight off the mind, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I've had a little bit of a. It's always a bit difficult, isn't it, if you get a niggle? Like, who do you go to help sort it out? I can't be alone with this one. So I have seen a podiatrist and I've seen a physio, and they've said 2 different things, which is not helpful.
Right. Good work, boys.
One was a woman, but yeah, good work.
Good work, boys and girls.
And 2 different diagnoses. One saying you can't run or bike, one saying you can run and bike. So I have obviously gone for the you can run and bike option.
Clearly you've gone with the one who says you can still train.
And there was no pain.
Welcome to our philosophy right here.
There was no pain running. And so I think it is a question of lack of strength. And so that's what I'm going to aim to work on.
I think you've got to go with it. If you get a professional opinion that says, I think you can still train if you do that, you've got to go with it over a professional opinion that says you shouldn't train. Because although all the books say, the first thing you should do is take loads of rest, we all know that you go completely mental if you stop training. I don't know anybody who's of our mindset that can stop training and stay mentally healthy.
Well, I think that's part of the test of being injured, isn't it? But I would say, so, I did the Malaga Marathon and I honestly did not run for 2.5 weeks, nearly 3 weeks after the marathon. And I think I got on my bike maybe once, perhaps not even once.
There's your problem right there. That's why your body's getting sore.
Oh, there you go.
You stop training.
Well, it could be. But anyway, the pain sort of did not go away. It didn't get any worse when I was running. It just was there. So, there we go. So a bit of confusion, I'd say. However, I did run this morning. No pain. I had my new trainers. And... yeah, I was loving it. I was running back along the bypass thinking, oh, this is like 6 weeks ago. It's great.
I don't know. Sometimes just getting new trainers, the fact they're a bit more supportive and they're a bit less beaten up, that can be a big difference, can't it? That's a good lesson. Buying new stuff always helps. We'll have that down as one of our basic philosophies. A, don't stop training. B, buy new stuff if in doubt.
Yeah, I would say I'm going with a sensible hat on here. Everybody is different. And previously, I have actually done the rest. And
the disclaimer being that we're not trained medical professionals.
No, I'm most definitely not a trained medical professional.
Please see a physician before following any advice this podcast gives out.
But no, when I did have a dodgy knee, I don't know, 6 years ago or something. And I went to see a physio then, and he said, do not run on it. And I did not run on it for about 6 weeks. And all I could do was swimming. And all I could say is thank God for that advice, because that got me into triathlon in the first place.
Oh, there you are.
So do sometimes listen to these professionals. And if they tell you can keep on running and biking, well, heck, that's great.
I wonder if there's anybody over the age of about 20 who's ended up in triathlon for any reason other than they were injured in the sport they used to do and they took up doing something else, like biking and swimming because they were an injured runner, or running and swimming because they were an injured biker. It's got to be the majority of our sport have come into it because they were injured doing just single sport training, I reckon.
Yeah, I think you might be right. My injury was because I couldn't ride a bike and I decided to get too close to a parked car wing mirror.
Oh no! Did you ride into a car?
I rode into a wing mirror on a parked car. It wasn't even moving. And so I wasn't, honestly, I wasn't even.
You should remind yourself of this. Your bike skills have come a long way.
Yes.
Even as they are, your bike skills have come a long way. If you're avoiding the static obstacles,
I'm doing well.
It's all good, mate.
Exactly. So
it's all good.
Yeah, and entertaining. So yeah, I've done my first run. I think last week we talked about I was going to be teaming up with Kate from Raceforce to do the open adventure up in Bowland. It's sort of a mixture of mountain biking and trail running. Well, I didn't go and do that because by the time, so the initial advice was don't run. So then I had pulled out, and then obviously I was told, oh yeah, you can run, but it was a bit too late by then to rearrange it all. So I didn't do it and had a great day with my mum instead.
Ace stuff. And I believe you substituted in your wonderful better half, Rich.
Yep.
Parachuted him in into Team Raceforce. How did they get on?
Rich's chain broke within the first 200 metres.
Oh no! So, he'd only built that bike last week as well, hadn't he?
So I think some lovely people had a tool that they could use to get it fixed, and they said that they had a really, really good time. They ended up going over a moor through. It does actually say on the map, right? Boggy, okay. And given the amount of rain that we have had in this country, especially further north, well, you might maybe avoid a bit that said boggy.
You might navigate around that. I'm guessing they didn't.
No, they didn't. So Rich ended up in a bog up to his waist. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Good work, guys.
They said they had a really, really good time and it was really good fun. And I mean, I'm looking at the map and it is, so for someone who hasn't done any mountain biking before, which really would be me, it does genuinely look like you can choose to go to the points on a road if you wanted to. So they do have a mixture of off-road and on-road points. And okay, you might not get as many if you don't go off-road, but it does show that it is open for everybody. That's the point I'm trying to make. So
really good fun. Yeah. If anyone's looking for something to do during the winter and they've got a mountain bike and can half read a map, I had a lot of fun doing the last one.
Yeah.
My partner was away. We were meant to be doing the one yesterday as well, but he's buggered off to play TAS and left me. So I went out for a big old bike ride in the Peak District instead.
Oh, nice. How was it?
It was the day of the year for riding bikes yesterday. It was really pleasant temperature. I reckon it was probably no colder than 5 degrees, even up on the tops. And Lynn's had taken the boy out for the day to a party, and I had the whole day, so I did 5 hours and pretty much went round all the climbs in the Peak District, which was magic. Hardly saw any of the cyclists out at all. And when I did, on 4 separate occasions, people shouted, "Hi, Rob." So whoever that was, if you're listeners to the show and you saw me in my Oxygen Addict kit, I waved and said hi, but you know the combined passing speed was probably 30 miles an hour, so I have no idea who it was. But lots of friendly groups passed by and said hi.
Oh, nice.
Got some serious climbing in on the way as well.
Fantastic.
It was all good.
And were you pooped by the end of it?
I wasn't in too bad a shape actually, Hells.
Nice.
I was this winter of Zwifting has really held my biking form together actually. I got to the end of 5 hours and the last half an hour my back was a bit sore, my neck was a bit sore, but legs wise I was still pushing on.
Fantastic.
So I don't think I'm going to embarrass myself on this training camp in Fuerte in a few weeks' time.
Result?
Yeah, and it's looking pretty good for the season if I can get a couple of long rides in Fuerte.
Yeah.
A couple of long rides in March. Then we've got Abersoch in April. Fred Whitton in May.
You're doing the Fred Whitton?
I've entered. The results.
Amazing.
I wonder when the results are out. Actually, it might be this week. The results it was open last week for a week, and then I think maybe it's the 20th. They have like a lottery to see if you get in or not.
Wow.
So,
I would like to know if any listeners have done the Fred Whitton. Get in touch.
How much trouble I'm in.
Yeah, I would love to know your experience of it, and I don't know. I imagine after sort of 8 hours, you're just broken. So yeah, please, any tips for Rob for potentially doing the Fred Whitten? Get in touch. We're at Cup of Tri on Twitter, or you can get in touch. You can email. You can email Rob, and you can get in touch via Facebook as well.
Yeah, the Facebook page is /Cup of Tri. So I'll put a post on Facebook after this and see if anyone's got any knowledge. Yeah, be interesting to see if anyone else has entered and how many people get in actually, because it's going to be a good day out.
Hats off to anybody who does the Fred Whitten. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and also as well, I'm going to give a road safety awareness thing here. It was pretty icy on the tops in the Peak District.
Yeah.
I had 3 brown trouser events coming down, short, sharp, like rainy, but in the shadows, icy. Like back wheel came out, and how I didn't come off, I don't know. But even being aware of it, it was like, oh, and I'm off. Oh no, I'm not. You know, I was fully expecting to hit the deck on 2 occasions, and somehow, just stayed up. So be super careful if you're getting out for a winter's ride. I thought, and that was, yes, it was pretty warm all round, but right up on the tops, there's just, it's been so wet. There's so much water running down the road.
But then when the temperature drops, it's...
Oh, yeah.
That is one thing that always, I don't know, I guess not being the most confident biker, just if it's icy outside, I don't want to know. Because there was one time once I went out on a club ride and we hit ice, and about half the group came off. I came off, but I didn't hurt myself, thankfully. But there were lots of bruises, and it just, after that, put me off totally.
I think it's like if you stay on the main road, you're okay. Where it's gritted, you're fine. And the problem is then when you get confident and you forget it's kind of dangerous in this temperature. And I headed off on some roads I haven't ridden on for a couple of years. They're really sort of small tracks across the top of the moors, and it was just deadly. So
think about your route carefully.
Yeah. And there's definitely a point when I was thinking, I've got some new brake blocks at home sitting in a packet on the list of things to do. And in my mind, the metal was rubbing against the rim of the wheel. It was this. Why didn't you? It's a 3-minute job. Why didn't you put the new brake blocks on before you went out? So, in fact, I'm going to put a note on my to-do list now. Change brake blocks. Yeah, it's always those things, isn't it? And batteries in your lights and things.
Yeah, always have them on charge overnight. That's my...
Oh, yeah.
Or as soon as you finish using them, put them back on charge.
I'm still old school. I've still got AAA and AA's.
Oh, right. Brilliant.
Disastrous.
No, mine's a big battery pack, but it does well. Anyway, Rob, there's been one race this weekend, which I think we need to bring people up to date with. There was one in the Southern Hemisphere as well, but 2 in the Southern Hemisphere. But I think the main one was Ironman 70.3 Pucon in Chile.
In Chile. Yes, indeed.
Beautiful part of the world, and I think that near volcanoes. And Rachel Joyce was racing her season opener, and we mentioned last week that she was a bit like, well, I've never done a race before this early in July, so let's see how it goes. Well, she came second.
January, baby. January. Not July.
Did you say July?
You said July.
Wow, she might have done a few races in July. I don't know if I got that from. Anyway, Rachel Joyce came second behind Barbara Riveros of Chile, and she's one of the ITU athletes and does a lot of Xterra as well. So Barbara Riveros won in 4:42 with Rachel Joyce second in 4:46. And then Valentina Carvalho third in 4:47. And Rachel Joyce got the fastest run split of the day in 1:28.01.
Had she had something on try247.com, something about her having root canal work done this week?
Rachel Joyce?
So Rachel Joyce, I think, has had some kind of hideous dental treatment in the run-up to it, as well as a 16-hour flight.
Oh, goodness.
So they were basically saying, we don't know how she's going to go. And then they've kind of gone, oh, well, she came second. Fair play. No. So tell you what, if you can do that off a 16-hour flight and root canal work, good work, Joyce.
That's amazing. And also, she's gone from Northern Hemisphere to Southern Hemisphere, which is always difficult so early in the year, isn't it? And Riveros is obviously home athlete, and has probably spent a little bit more time in the Southern Hemisphere recently.
Yeah, you'd imagine so, wouldn't you? Anyway, good to get a mark on the board and some cash in the bank for the start of the year for her.
Absolutely. In the men's race, it was won by Ben Collins of USA in 3:59. Guilherme Manacchio of Brazil in 4:03 was second, and then Chile's Felipe Barraza was third in 4:04.
Oh, good pronunciation again.
Gracias.
Loving the pronunciation.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's at this point give a shout out to sponsors raceforce.co.uk. If you're thinking about going abroad later on this year, give them a call, info@raceforce.co.uk. You can contact them on Twitter at raceforce. They have been to loads of the big events over Europe and have got lots of information about the profiles on the race courses and stuff. Now, listeners to the Cup of Tri receive a 10% discount with the code COT10. You get 10% off all race tours, training weekends and bike transport services, excluding the bike bus standard. And they do payment plans as well.
Yep.
So you can secure your booking for £100 rather than paying the full chunk up front. Pretty cool.
That's absolutely right. And at the moment, some of their tri events are getting pretty busy. So Mallorca 70.3, Challenge Roth and Ironman Barcelona are almost full. So if you are racing on any of them and you want to get your bike out there, you want to be part of the Raceforce crew out there, get securing your place ASAP. They've just added Ironman Frankfurt and Challenge Valksay as their new races this season. And they've also got some spaces available for Barcelona 70.3, Zell am See 70.3, and the Ironman Vichy and Ironman Mallorca. So if you're doing any of them and you want your bike taken out on the bike bus, book your place at raceforce.co.uk.
Is Challenge Valksay, is that the one that's going to be the European ETU champs this year?
It is. It's going to be the European Middle Distance Championships, and
it does look beautiful, doesn't it?
I really think it would be stunning. Like I think Austria,
chocolate box.
Yep, totally. Austria and Switzerland for me. I love them anyway.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the summer, if you were to get blue skies, even if you don't get blue skies, it'll still be absolutely stunning. Sadly, I can't do it this year. I guess I'd have to qualify as well anyway. But if you can qualify or you're thinking about it, really. I know.
Is it not one of those ones do you just not enter? I think you enter Challenge Valksay and then you throw your hat in the ring with the BTF and they pick the top 10, what they consider the top 10 or whatever in each age group, don't they?
Well, that's a good point. You
can actually just enter it.
You can enter it and totally enter it and not be part of the ETU Middle Distance Championships. So definitely you can.
So get on
it for sure. And then so if you do have friends or family or whatever who have qualified, well then you can go and race with them too in the open category.
Nice.
Yeah, brilliant.
I quite fancy a trip out to the Austrian Alps during the summer. We haven't got a summer holiday lined up this year. Well, I'm saying that we're going to Greece for 2 weeks in June, but that's
August is different, isn't it?
3 months earlier, yeah.
You should consider it.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It'd be rude not to, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean Zell am See, that is obviously also in Austria. That's a 70.3. Absolutely stunning course, stunning setting, and the lake is just incredible. I'd highly recommend it.
Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. Right, what else have we got going on then? We've been through our race results. There's not really a huge amount going on at the moment, is there, in terms of races at this time of year? There was some cross-country action, wasn't there? County cross-country championships were on this weekend. I wonder if any of the listeners raced there. Got muddy and dirty.
I saw... I'll tell you the one photo which did make me laugh. Did you see a photo of Mo Farah slipping over? He was racing... he was racing up in Edinburgh. In the major cross country there, and there's this really good photo of him sort of slipping around a corner, and Innovate, the trainer company, have got that photo, and they just sort of said, at Mo Farah, they're called this particular brand of trainer. Here's more information.
Brilliant sort of guerrilla marketing.
Yeah, I thought that was quite clever.
Dear Mo, give us a ring. You might want to buy a pair of these.
Yeah, I thought that was really good. So yeah, but no, in the county ones, I know Claire Shear Simmons, who we've spoken to before, she had a great result, didn't she?
She did. Was she second? I think she had a silver, I read.
Was she fourth and then second, sort of second in her age?
Second in her age group.
I think so.
Second vet. I think you're right, yeah. That's a good performance though, isn't it? Fourth overall at the counties.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely.
Good work, CSS. That's brilliant.
Yeah. And the one which Mo Farah I was telling you about, so he got second at the Great Edinburgh Cross Country. An American guy, Garrett Heath, won, but Kate Avery won the women's race.
I love that big park up in Edinburgh. That's where I went for my big run on the day after New Year's Day. Yeah. And I was running along that bit of park. It's Holyrood Park, isn't it? On the outskirts. And I was thinking, oh, this is where they have the cross country. I wonder where that goes.
They pretty much go through a lot of... it looks so muddy.
It was pretty wet when I was there without hundreds of people chasing around on it. It was pretty wet.
Yeah, it's there are some deep.
The really funny thing with it is, right, you run to the top and you've got your running kit on and your proper Gore-Tex jacket and your woolly hat and your gloves, and you kind of scramble up the far side on the runner's path and get to the top. And there was like 25 Japanese tourists all wearing high heels and little sort of slinky jeans and looking half dead from hypothermia, but also very stylish on top, taking photos. It's like, how the hell have you lot got here? Where's the path that I've missed?
It's when you go up Snowdon and then there's all these people in very much non-hiking gear, and it's similar. You're thinking, wow,
come up on the train.
Exactly. I think you might have trained it up. But,
good for them.
Definitely.
Good for them.
Rob, I was going to ask. I think, isn't it next week? Is next week a bit of a big week for you?
Oh boy, yeah. Hey, smooth intro. I like
What's
that.
Happening next week?
Next Wednesday, the launch of Team Oxygen Addict is going to happen. It's Wednesday, the 20th of January. So we're saying it's a launch. It's actually like the beta launch because we've decided we're going to do it for the first 20 people at half price and try and get the kinks in the system worked out. And then we're going to close it down for a month and try and get everybody inside and make sure all the forums work and make sure the training plans get delivered in time in the right places. Because Hells, I don't know what's going to happen. It could be awesome, but there seems that at the moment there's a lot of spreadsheets going on at my end, thinking if this happens, then what do we do? So I'm pretty confident we're going to get these 20 people inside. We've had a brilliant sort of response so far to the people who've said they're interested. So if people are listening and you're interested, we genuinely do want people who are going to help us develop this system. So if you're going to come in early, you will get the lifetime discount, but we do expect you to be sort of giving us the feedback on what could be better and what you like and what you don't and what we can improve. So if that's your kind of bag, you enjoy helping people like me be a bit less rubbish, then come on board. We're going to go live on the early hours of Wednesday, the 20th of January. So the next podcast will probably be out before it's gone live, actually. When we've got 20 people in, we're going to shut the doors and then and we'll open it back up again about another month later for the main people to come in. And it should still give everybody 18 to 20 weeks until the big sort of Ironman races in the middle of the summer. So it's looking cool. We're going to get that community together, Hells.
Fantastic. And what's the latest on stash and kit, Rob?
It's on the back burner at the moment.
Okay.
The stash and the kit is it's looking like it's going to be nice, but there's more important things to work out.
Yeah. Okay.
I do need to get on that. That's on the list. You're stressing me out.
Sorry.
I was out in the old Castelli kit this weekend and thinking, it makes such a difference having a comfortable chamois. I don't know about you, but I save my nice kit for the long ride, and on the turbo, it's like the knackered old tri-shorts get used.
Yeah,
I've got a couple of pairs that just need to go in the bin because 30 minutes into a turbo session, they are killing me.
Oh no, that's not good.
Yeah, don't need to be chafed.
No. But you always think, it's only the turbo, it'll be fine. It's, half an hour, I can deal with this. And then, then tomorrow I can put the nice pair on.
Has it been your experience that chafage lasts about 36 to 48 hours? And it's like the gift that keeps on giving. Once you get chafed down there, you really know about it for a couple of days.
It's most definitely the gift that keeps on giving, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely is, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And Rob, there's been a few more people giving us a little bit of love.
Yeah, thank you very much. The patrons of the podcast, people keep signing up. So this week, big thank you very much to Paul Lunn and Neil Feekins. We very much appreciate you signing up to support the podcast with your monthly donations. If any other listeners would like to do that, we'd very much appreciate your help in supporting the show. You can go over to the page at oxygenaddict.com/podcast. Click on the link at the right that says become a patron, and you can donate £2 a month, £5 a month, or £10 a month to keep that show running. You will have our undying gratitude, won't they, Hells?
Oh, absolutely. It's really
sweet, isn't it?
It really helps.
I've been really touched by the number of people who've been doing this for us, actually, because when we first put the patrons page up, I wasn't sure how it was going to go down, but we're getting a lot of support from people, so we really very much appreciate it. So if you do that, send us over a photo as well at the same time, and then we can get your photograph up on the website. So Neil and Paul, if you're listening, email us over a photo. I've got Neil's already, I think, so Paul, you need to send it over for us, mate, and we'll get you up as a supporter of the show on the page there. So what we've got coming up, Hells?
Well, we have Ironman 70.3 South Africa, not this weekend, but the weekend after, January the 24th. And I was just having a little look at the start lists there. And we spoke to Susie Cheetham a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? You can check out that interview if you go to oxygenaddict.com/podcast and listen back if you haven't heard it. It was a really, really interesting interview with Susie, who got top 10s at Kona and the 70.3 World Champs last year. So she is on the start list for the female pros, as is Jodie Swallow. And Diana Riesler as well of Germany's on there. And then for the men, you've got on the start list, Will Clark is on the start list. Mark Threlfall is on the start list. Jodie Swallow's boyfriend, James Cunningham, is on the start list. And then Matt Troutman, he won Ironman Wales, not this past year, but the year before. And Stuart Morace, they're both kind of home guys as well. So a decent race will be had there.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. It's episode 51, the Susie Cheetham episode, if people want to go back and listen. That was a good one. I enjoyed talking to her, actually. And she's just rolled out new sponsors with Cervelo have picked her up, haven't they? So who do you fancy, her or Jodie Swallow?
That's a good question.
Now, Jodie Swallow's always on form, isn't she, for the early season races? She really smashes the South African ones. But so is Susie, so it'll be her first race this year, won't it?
Yep. That is a very good question, Rob.
Make the call.
Make the call.
Who are you going for?
I reckon... I think
I'm going for Susie.
Well, I was about to say I think Susie Cheetham will run Jodie Swallow down. There
we go. You're calling her running down. She was running exceptionally well, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Back end of last season. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see that. About matched on the bike, Jodie putting a couple of minutes into her in the water, do you think? Interesting to see what happens there, because Susie's swim had improved massively, hadn't it, at Kona?
Yeah.
She had a massive breakthrough performance swim there, so good stuff.
There we go. It's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be I'd like to see them push each other. That'd make a really good race, wouldn't it, if they could go head to head on the run?
Yeah. We will see.
Come on, ladies, give us an iron war.
We will see. And then, Rob, who do you reckon will get the men's then?
Oh, that is a tough one. James Kanama's always done really well there. I must admit, I don't know. It's so hard to tell
really
early
hard.
Season,
I think it's almost unfair to as well.
You don't know whether people are going to turn up in really good shape and try and claim some money, or whether people are just using it as a first sort of blowout, and they just see how they feel on the day. It must be tough as a pro triathlete racing year round, essentially only getting a month off and then getting back to racing in January and flying all around the world. Must be challenging, mustn't it?
Well, because I guess it's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah,
definitely it's part of why you do it. And if you said to I don't know, someone who's working normally, let's say office 9 to 5, they'd be like, my goodness, I'd kill to say have a month off and then fly around the world and race. But what they don't think is actually the impact on the body. And definitely to be doing intense racing pretty much 11 months out of 12, if not 12, yeah, it does have an impact on your body. And you can't be amazing at every single race you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless you're
Well, it'll be interesting to see
superhuman.
how it plays out.
Yeah. So, and then it'll sort of trickle in, won't it? Because we mentioned last week, Israman will be going on same weekend, I think. And you know, we'll be getting outside more and more. So the triathlon season it'll come round sooner than.
Yeah, it's on its way. It's like, I always think this week is sort of the hardest week to get through because it's still getting darker in the mornings. And
No, it's not now. My friend,
it's starting to finally get
weatherman,
lighter.
yeah, he said last week, it's going to be getting lighter. And I was like, you have made my day.
Didn't feel like it this morning.
No, it didn't. But he said this I think I saw him one morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. And he said, from tomorrow, it's going to be getting lighter. And I said, you genuinely, this is 6 a.m. You have made this is the best news ever. This means we're going to be getting to summer soon.
Yeah, that's it. We're just going to graft through the next couple of weeks. I reckon it's Valentine's Day when you finally turn around and go, actually, I've noticed you notice it starting to get lighter.
What date do you fly
Valentine's Day?
Us?
I fly on the 3rd.
Oh.
So we've got a week of sunshine coming back, and hopefully we'll have light at the end of the tunnel, as it were, daylight-wise.
Love it.
Right, so that's enough nonsense from you and me for this week. Let's go over to this week's interview. We're very lucky to be joined by the wonderful Matt Dixon, Purple Patch coach extraordinaire, coach to, well, lots of different pro triathletes based over in San Francisco. We've had Emma Kate Lidbury on, haven't we? He's also the coach to Jesse Thomas, who was the winner of Ironman Wales. So it's a great opportunity to catch up with him. He's probably one of the most famous big name triathlon coaches in the world at the moment. So we were dead lucky to get him on for 30 minutes and to pick his brains about different things that age group triathletes can do to help them have the best season ever this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's you can see more information as well on his website, purplepatchfitness.com. He's got a blog. There's loads of good stuff on that website, so do check it out, and enjoy the interview.
Right, so I'm really chuffed to have with us on the podcast Matt Dixon from Purple Patch Fitness. Matt, thanks ever so much for joining us all the way from San Francisco. It's really good of you, and we've managed to make the timings of this call work, which hasn't been easy, has it?
No, thank you very much, Rob. Yeah, very, very glad to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Oh man, it's our pleasure. It's the last time I saw you were actually on the Ironman Kona coverage, being one of the coaching talking heads on that. So I'm pinching myself a little bit really, because you're one of my coaching heroes, Matt. So it's really good to have you on. I really appreciate it. Listen, I think I mentioned this in the pre-call with you. I think it'll come as a surprise to a lot of listeners that you're actually English, because you've got such a big name in coaching these days, and Purple Patch has become so famous in the triathlon coaching and Ironman coaching world. And you're based out in San Francisco. So I know a couple of my club mates were saying, how are you getting Matt Dixon on? He's an American, isn't he? So do you want to go over your background a little bit for us and explain sort of firstly how you've ended up as a triathlon coach and how you've ended up living over in San Francisco?
Yeah, sure. I'm actually, it may surprise people, but and horrify people. Maybe it's the worst thing I can start with, but I'm actually originally from Southend in Essex, and I grew up the east side of London. So sort of an extended Cockney in many ways, but I grew up as a swimmer. Actually, that was my sport growing up, and my parents were both swimming teachers. My mum actually owned a swimming school, and sort of almost pre-internet, 1992, I came across to the States on a swimming scholarship. So the university system over here is obviously very robust, and I was a sort of a swimmer, came across, and I thought, I'll give it a try, and came across as a penniless student, ended up spending the 4 years going through university here, and I came back, and I would come back every summer to Britain. I did the Olympic trials in 92 and in 96 and finaled both times, so I was sort of right on that periphery of being an Olympian, but didn't make it, made the finals but didn't make it. And from there, my actual start in coaching was swimming coaching. I was very, very lucky. I got a coaching job at one of the top amateur programs, age group programs, so sort of kids that are 14 to 18 years of age. and we had a very successful program. And I think that was actually still really instrumental for me for coaching, having a group environment, dealing with multiple personalities and teenagers at a high level, many of whom went on to sort of receive sports scholarships in the universities over here. So I felt like that was really good. And through my degree, I was an exercise physiologist in my undergraduate. Ended up sort of cascading on doing my master's degree in clinical and exercise physiology, coaching swimming at a university over here. So my world was really swimming. But it was when I was doing my master's degree that, as a bet, actually, I did my first triathlon. And just
I love that.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people nodding their heads at this moment.
It really was. It was one of those things, and to show you how clueless I was, it was an Olympic distance race in South Carolina, and a rough ocean swim. And of course, being a collegiate swimmer, I went into the water with no real thought about the race. I just thought, I'll be a passenger and it will be fun. And I came out of the water with a 2-minute lead. And so I got into transition and shouted to my friend, "What do I do now?" Like I didn't know anything. And I was the epitome of clueless. But I ended up falling in love with the sport, doing the sport as an amateur for a year or two, and ended up sort of transcending into sort of almost stumbling into being a professional triathlete. And I think that, I don't think many people will know me for my results as a professional. I had a few pretty decent results, 1 or 2 wins, but really I'm the epitome of a great story of how to do a professional career poorly. And, I had very ambitious coaches that led me. I basically took the work ethic of swimming, which was a very hard work ethic, and quadrupled it as I was going to go and do half Ironman and Ironman and train myself into the ground with the help of some coaches. Despite my own coaching background in swimming, despite being an exercise physiologist, despite really should have known better, I sort of had a rapid climb in fitness, a plateau, and decline into really chronic fatigue, whatever that means. But it forced me, actually, it sort of ended in parentheses, my career. And I spent the next 18 months actually unable to exercise whatsoever, struggling to get out of bed. And bizarrely, that was really the best thing that ever could have happened to me, because I think that in that time where I was a little bit lost, had this sort of coaching background, this educational background, this experience as an elite athlete, I had a chance to actually really take a step back and look at not just myself and where I had gone wrong, but really look at the sport. And at that time, about 10 years ago, I really sort of looked at the sport and felt like there needed to be some changes. And I think it was really the birth of my coaching philosophy and methodology that really came out of that experience.
Yeah, it's a really interesting story that, I mean, you've very modestly skipped over your pro career and gone straight to the sort of chronic fatigue stage. But I first came across you in your coaching methodology because I was on a training camp and went on a run with Rasmus Henning. And obviously, I think, whether rightly or wrongly, you seem to have attracted this reputation as the coach that professionals go to kind of get them through a plateau, possibly a lot of the time caused by either chronic overtraining or the fact that they're really, really overtired and they're finding it very, very difficult to bounce back from the kind of either the training they want to do or the training they've been told that they should be doing. And you seem to sort of have the reputation as the go-to coach to help people out of the hole. And I know you did a very successful job with Rasmus, because he bounced right back and went on to win. Was it Abu Dhabi, the big race in Abu Dhabi he won?
Yeah, he won.
He won that correctly.
It was a big race, yeah, Abu Dhabi. And firstly, he's not just a wonderful athlete, but he's an amazing person. And I'm very fond of Rasmus. And it was humbling to get to work with someone like him or a Chris Lieto, these sort of world-class athletes that end up teaching you as a coach always something while you're also guiding them. But it is true. You know, I have got the opportunity to work with a lot of athletes that have reached a plateau. And interestingly, actually, that I also have, I feel like a real, at least my own reputation, that when I look in the mirror, I think of myself as a developmental coach. I've taken a lot of athletes from amateur to very successful pros. Jesse Thomas, Meredith Kessler, Sarah Piampiano, who just won Western Australia, top 10 in the world. All of these athletes were nobody pros, and so I really love that side of the sport, which is development from the ground up. But for your question, I have had that chance, and in fact, over here I sometimes get called the recovery coach, not always in a complimentary fashion, although I take it in a complimentary fashion, and I think that it's important, that the background of that was at the time, 12 or 13 years ago, that I was going through an element of fatigue. And I had just essentially, in my lens, failed as a professional athlete. At that sport, at that time, the sport was, in my mind, really sort of banking off the relics of more sort of 1970s training methodology. The only barometer of success was volume and time. There was only passing considerations to components like recovery, strength and conditioning, nutrition and fueling. They're all subjects that people maybe spoke about, but it was just lip service. And I sort of was really determined. I sort of saw that as a flaw of the sport. And I just saw people walking around fit and fatigued. The sport has evolved a lot. I like to think that I've maybe been a little part of that evolution, because I that's what I really started to write about, to preach, and have a lot of success. That it doesn't matter whether it was Rasmus or Chris Lieto, who we sort of got out of fatigue and he ended up getting second in Kona. These athletes are professional athletes, but the same applies all the way down the scale, where it's about shifting athletes' lenses to what is success and transitioning them away from just saying success is I accumulated this many hours or this many miles, and actually morphing that into your plan is executing the work that is appropriate to you and from an amateur athlete within the framework of your life, not just dumping a training program on top of life, but actually being cognizant of the other stresses that you have, work, family, lack of sleep, etc., and then supporting that training program with absolutely critical supplements. So fueling after a workout, your best recovery tool, which is sleep. It's free. People can't buy sleep. They can buy compression socks, but it's vastly more powerful. It's a recovery tool. Daily nutrition, so all of the other supporting elements of it, and it ends up allowing, people always are fearful when they're resting, when their training sessions are easy. There's a natural lack of confidence that most athletes have, where they feel like, goodness me, my competitors are working really hard. The badge of honor is how many hours, how many miles. And so what we try and do with our pros, but all the way down, is to shift the relationship with recovery globally and not view it as train, here's your training, and if you have time, you do a little bit of recovery, or your recovery is just a day off, because it's much more, it's simple, but it's much more complex than that. We actually view recovery as a part of your training program. It doesn't mean that there's a shortcut to success. It doesn't mean that training is easy. And in fact, I very rarely, if ever, have had an athlete say your training is too easy. I think I'm a bit of a tough coach, but it is a facilitator and an integrated part of your training program. And that shift of relationship changes athletes' whole perception of themselves, how they're approaching the sport. And we prefer athletes to not show up fit and fatigued. We want to show up very fit but fresh, so that on the day they can execute their best performance, they can improve.
That's a fantastic philosophy, and for me personally as a coach, having read the things that you've written in magazines over the years and studied the people that you've coached, that was a real aha moment for me, because I realized all of a sudden, I think you were probably the first coach who who was writing about the importance of sleep and the importance of resting and recovering within your training. And as I said, I was on this training camp and went for a run with Rasmus Henning, who was at Playtest at the time. And, you could turn up and go for a run with him, and he'd kind of do 45 minutes with the group. And I badgered the poor guy for the whole way around this run, asking him about his training. And he'd just moved to you, and he was saying, if anything, my coach is making me do less and is making me recover more. And I, at the time, had just recovered from the sort of the chronic fatigue thing. I don't think anywhere near as badly as you were describing, but I'd had an episode where I was really ill and I'd had to have time off work. And I'd basically caused it myself by training myself into the ground. And I really had a moment where I thought, well, hang on a minute. If Rasmus Henning is talking about the importance of the mini recovery cycle within each week, let alone within each 10 weeks, I should really have a think about this. And I think we mentioned before, we had Chris Standage on the show a couple of months ago, who's a very, very good age group that you coach. And he was describing the same thing, that the recovery that you plan within the week has been an essential part of him being able to bounce back sort of within the week and also within the month.
Yeah, it is. And, people, I think that the great mistake is athletes think, train hard for 3 weeks and then recover for a week. And when you take a step back, it's like, well, spreadsheets that are mapped carefully like that might look very pretty, but that's not how life works. And life is dynamic, life is crazy, and we try and integrate life in training into this living, breathing thing. And ultimately, we really try and get athletes. Chris being a great example, who's a wonderful athlete and done very well, albeit remotely. He's living up in Cheshire, I think, and I'm living in San Francisco. But what we've really tried and done with athletes like him is enable him to differentiate what are the key focus sessions of the week. The ones that we're really, number one, they're going to be the toughest, but number two, they're the most specific. And then create a hierarchy in there to say, now what are the supporting sessions? And the goal of the supporting sessions, the extra sessions, are either to facilitate recovery, prepare you for an upcoming key session, or of course, establish some sort of general foundational conditioning or skills work. And by differentiating the mosaic of the training week, it creates clarity. It creates, these are my do not miss. These are the ones I need to get ready for. And it empowers athletes to say it's okay to go easy. So the actual in fact, it's essential to go easy, because on my 60-minute turbo session tonight, I'm going to go really easy because tomorrow morning I've got these intervals, and that's the one that's specific, that really I need to be ready for. And by creating clarity and hierarchy within a framework or the mosaic of a training week, it really empowers the athlete, and it sort of helps facilitate consistency and layering and layering and layering and layering of a training program versus
I love that.
Big hits.
Yeah, I love that, because it's so often you get an athlete comes to you and, they've maybe had coaching in swimming or running or biking before, and they try and think, well, as a runner, I had 2 interval sessions a week. So as a triathlete, I need to also have 2 bike interval sessions a week and 2 hard swim sessions a week. And before you know it, the week looks like hard intervals all the way through. And it's sometimes quite challenging, isn't it, to get an athlete to step back and say, actually, that's just far too much. We need to focus on these 2 key things you're going to do this week, and everything else supports that goes on with it.
Exactly. And in addition to that, the great mistake, or one of the 2 great mistakes that I think a lot of athletes make is in the rest of those sessions, because of either a lack of clarity in the purpose of the program or a lack of confidence, they end up creeping up the intensity of some of the lighter sessions. So they go too hard in the easy, and that ends up with a really monotonous program, because then the quality or the intensity or the load or the quality of execution of the key sessions is diluted, and it ends up just being this monotonous training program where everything's moderately hard, and so therefore they get moderately ready, and they get tired. People
don't feel that they should go slowly in a recovery session, because they feel it's cheating in some way and they're not getting the benefit out of it. Which leads me on, actually, people talk a lot about recovery, but what does it mean to you as a coach? And have you got like any tips for how athletes can use recovery effectively to help them get better in the sort of medium to long term?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, it's a subject that I have some passion around. Recovery is not just a rest day or certainly a rest week. In fact, none of my athletes take a complete week where they go very easy for the whole week, because that's a waste of time. I view recovery, and the way that I encourage athletes to view recovery is actually in three big buckets. And it's really important to understand this, because it sort of ties back to the original coaching philosophy. To my mind, there are three components of recovery. The first is your actual construction of the training plan or the training season. The second is what I would call sort of lifestyle recovery. And the third is modalities. So going through all three, obviously the training component is how you actually build the framework of, from a 10,000 foot view, your season, when you're integrating longer breaks that you can turn away from the sport emotionally and physically and provide an extended time of healing, probably a couple of times of the year that occurs, mid-season a little one, and then the end of the season a little longer one, 2 or 3 weeks, all the way down to sort of how you're planning multiple days of rest or lighter sessions a few times throughout the course of each block. And even in the mosaic of the training week, which sessions are lighter, which sessions are stronger. So the training plan prescription, yes, of course, everyone needs a smart training program that will yield results, adaptations, but we need to sort of plan and adjust and be responsible with recovery. But it's much more than that. The second component of recovery for me is what I would bucket in as lifestyle. And there's really two major ones in there, which is fueling and nutrition and sleep. So with fueling and nutrition, I treat those two things as different. Nutrition being your daily eating habits, your breakfast, lunch, dinners, and snacks. Obviously, high quality food is better for athletes. Try and avoid Pizza Hut and McDonald's. You're at least a step of the way. But then the second one, fueling, that's really, really critical. So what are you doing during, but especially for me when it comes to recovery, post-training recovery, every single session should be finished with the intake of calories. And that is, this conversation is too big of a conversation to go in exactly what those calories should be. But the biggest thing is making sure that you're not creating a massive deficit immediately within 60 minutes, sort of following a workout, that you're consuming calories. And that's a big component of recovery for me. It limits physiological stress. It limits cravings later in the day. It facilitates better eating habits, and it facilitates recovery. So that is a component of recovery, as is sleep. And it's sort of my biggest commodity that I have as a person is probably time. I don't have much of it, and sleep. And it's really, really powerful. So for athletes, sleep quality is critical. And in there, I live in San Francisco, where we have very many forward-thinking companies. My wife used to work for Google, and they had a nap room in there. And there's real science behind sort of executive and work performance, but also sports performance, of these little micro naps, 15 to 20 minutes that you get to lie down. You don't have to fall asleep. It's almost meditation, but it's really, really powerful. And so sleep quality, not just how much time you're lying in, and then little micro naps, huge component. The final bucket of recovery is modalities. And I like to say that's everything you can buy. Massage, compression, all of the things that are foam roller, trigger point, that type of stuff. Good elements in it. But when you're, as an athlete, the first two big buckets, the construction of a smart training program, and then the stuff that is effectively free, or at least we have to do anyway as human beings, which is to sleep and eat well. So we'll bucket those as free. Those are massively more important. And things like whether you're wearing compression socks or you're going to have a massage at a certain point, that is incremental to me. Good, but an afterthought relative to getting the very basics right first. And if we can get the basics right, you're 95% of the way there.
Yeah, it's so refreshing to hear somebody say this. I think you're so right. And it all comes down to things being driven by market forces, doesn't it? That people can promote and sell compression socks and things like that, which, as you've said, they're great. But the best stuff is the extra hour of sleep a night you can get.
It's hugely important. And just, I would say I've mentioned it now, the two biggest mistakes that athletes make. If you sort of, if you had me at gunpoint and said, tell me the biggest mistake, I would say two. And the first was what I mentioned earlier, not enough divergence of intensity or effort on the really easy sessions relative to the hard sessions. People go too hard on the easy sessions. And the second one is post-exercise fueling. So even if you forget to eat during the session, post-exercise fueling, if you can get those two things to become habitual, I love that word, as a habit. If you can make it a habit that you don't think about, and then you are 9/10 of the way there with much of training.
Absolutely. And what would your number one tip be for fueling post-workout then? Do you have a recommended some kind of snack or drink to go to? What would you advise people to be having after a hard couple of hours of working out?
That this will annoy people, but what you like, because the hardest battle is to get people to actually consume calories, and so you're not going to eat something that you don't like. But with that said, it depends a little bit as you go throughout the year. At the moment over here and in England, the overall training, the form and fitness of athletes is globally a little bit lower right now. The training is progressing back into being stronger, but we've just gone through a phase of what we call post-season, and now we're in our pre-season, which is our sort of preview to work. So we're starting to do work, and at this time of the year we have athletes typically eat real food, and it has to be some carbohydrate. In fact, if you do like starchy carbohydrates, post-exercise is the best time to consume them. And then there wants to be a little bit of protein in there as well. Protein is a great suppressor of cortisol, your stress hormone, and cortisol rises during training. So when you get on with your work day, you want to lower that. So we want some protein in there, and we want some carbohydrate. Very, very intense sessions or very long sessions, you might take in, a recovery shake or something like that. But for the most part, it's getting athletes to eat real food, high quality, immediately following the workout. So it might be a tortilla with chicken and avocado and rice. It might be porridge with nuts and I would say yogurt, but I'll say yogurt for the English. Shows I've been in America for too long.
It does, doesn't it?
So oatmeal, nuts, raisins, and yogurt. So you can translate that into Southend if you want, and we'll get there.
Great stuff. Listen, one of my favourite stories reading in the magazines a couple of years ago was your story of starting to coach Jesse Thomas. Now, obviously, he's an American, but the thing that might be of interest to British listeners is him winning Ironman Wales, his first attempts at the distance. And I was lucky I got to interview him very briefly at the finish line for maybe a minute and a half before he got whisked away. And you could just see on him, he couldn't quite believe that he'd managed to pull it off. And he said, my longest ride was 4 hours, man, and I can't believe I've done this. So do you want to talk a little bit about him and his story, about where he came from as a runner and then all the way through to winning Ironman Wales?
Yeah, what a great example of fantastic coaching, eh? No, it's
all down to the coaching.
Jesse is firstly, he's a quite exceptional human being. He has him and his wife, Lauren Fleshman. If you don't get to follow those two, they're very, very interesting people, and they're both very accomplished. In fact, Jesse can continue to excel in triathlon all he likes, but he'll still be the second tier athlete in the family. Lauren is a wonderful runner, and they both ran at Stanford. Jesse was a steeplechase runner, and if you've ever met a steeplechase runner, they're always a little bit off kilter. There's always a little zany. And
I was a steeplechase runner, Matt.
there you go. I could smell it across this call. I could tell Rob, but he's a bigger guy for a triathlete with a big engine and very, very smart. really pragmatic, and someone that I started coaching as an amateur that really bought into the global approach. He's very much half Ironman focused in distance, Ironman 70.3. He's most known, of course, for his 5 wins in a row at Wildflower, which is a really legendary race and obviously hasn't been done before. And is fantastic. But his big goal of 2015 last season was the World Championships. We felt like he could really have an imprint on the race there. In fact, I felt like he could get into the top 10, and if not, be into the top 5 in that race. And so our primary focus was the Austrian 70.3 Worlds. At the same time, I said to him that it was time that if he did want to go to do an Ironman, we should think about transitioning to doing a race after the Worlds. And we picked, about 3 weeks before he left for Austria, we picked Wales, which was 2 weeks after Austria. And I said, yep, let's go and do an Ironman. You're going to do absolutely zero Ironman-specific training. You're just going to go and do it. There's no pressure on it. It's a great course for you because it could be cool, it could be rainy, it could be windy, and it's tough. So similar to Wildflower, which is tough terrain, lots of trail running, it's sort of a really interesting course that I think you'll enjoy. You have no pressure, you can go and do it. You're just not going to be trained for it. And so I really tried to take the pressure off of him. And we went to Austria, and he had an absolutely exceptional race. And in fact, but left that race highly frustrated. And truth be told, he received a penalty on the bike, which was an erroneous call. It was a mistake by the referees. They actually privately, although I'm now saying it publicly, admitted it was a mistake. And at that point, he had moved through till 5th overall.
Yeah,
and,
so they actually admitted afterwards it was a mistake, that call, did they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was absolutely.
Oh, wow.
He was riding with actually Kienle, and not many people get to ride with Kienle, but that's how strong of a rider Jesse was. So
yeah,
as a coach, so while he sort of bottled that emotional frustration, but at the same time, so I had to actually try and calm him down. He was so upset. There's so much money, time, and energy, sacrifices for family that go into that, and to have it sort of feeling like you're stripped away, that he, probably would have been up there at somewhere between 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th position, which really would have been significant for sponsors as well as himself personally.
Absolutely, yeah.
So my job as a coach in that 2 weeks was to make sure that frustration didn't lead to anger, that didn't lead to trying to prove a point. And so my focus with him was to really try and get him to focus on, as a team, we nailed it. So while you didn't actually have that result on the board, physically, you're in prime shape. Physically, you rode great. Physically, you're very fit. And then my job was to try and get him to fake his way through a challenging Ironman. And the way that we approached that was I got him to commit. Jesse is a racer, so he loves to race races. And I had to persuade him going into that Ironman in Wales to go and I came up with a catchphrase: go and train all day. Go and train all day. Make smart decisions all day, but you're going to go and train all day because you're not able to race because you haven't earned the race because we haven't prepared for it. And secretly, in conversations with my assistant, Paul Buick, who works with all of my pros on their bike riding, we both felt that he could actually go very, very well there. But to get him there, we had to try and calm him down and go and treat it as a fun day out in the sun or rain, whatever was given to him. And so he was told, by memory, it was a 4-loop run course. And I said to him, I will let you race, and that's in the last 10K you can race. And even on the race day, he made a smart decision to ride with the German lad that had just done pretty well at Worlds. I think he was just outside of the top.
Yeah, it was Marcus Tomska, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I think his name.
Who's a very strong rider, and
very strong. Yeah.
Jesse sort of rode behind him legally for a certain distance, and then decided, you know what, this is too much. I'm going to let him go. I'm going to have my fun in the sun, and then I'm just going to go and run. And in preparation for that race, he'd done, I think his longest ride was 80 miles or so, and his longest run was 16 miles, which, when your race pace in a half Ironman is 5:15 pace, it doesn't take you long to do 16 miles. It was about an hour, an hour 40, an hour 45, but he'd only done a couple of those. Mostly Jesse does 70, 80-minute runs, not beyond that. And so I just got him to be really, really calm, and it was really his athleticism. The conditions were kind to him. It was cool. And he obviously sort of he just had one of those days. And sometimes when you relax, have fun, and go in with confidence that you're fit, but just say, you know what, I've got nothing to lose, so I'm not going to have low expectations. I'm going to have no expectations. And that enabled his body.
Fantastic.
He ran his 2:52 and he ended up winning, which was a surprise to him, but a fantastic opening to. Okay, now I want to go and do. Now I want to go on a new adventure in the tail end of my career, because he's about 35, and I'm going to go and give this Ironman a crack. So we're gonna go and choose some tough races and go and hunt some tough races for him to go and do, because it's a really fun adventure. And so we're gonna do Lanzarote in May, and test him in the heat a little bit, and then hopefully, if all goes well and progresses, probably give it a crack in Hawaii as well.
Fantastic stuff. And listen, I think your story there highlights the real difference, I think, between training an athlete and coaching an athlete, because all of the things you've talked about there are not about the way you physically conditioned him for the race, although that's, undoubtedly very important. Everything of your focus around him was on getting his mindset for the race, wasn't it? It was on preparing him for the things he was going to face and not letting him be angry, and actually coaching the mental aspect of it. Is that something you do a lot of with your athletes?
Yeah, I do, and to be honest, it's all levels. So I view a training program as having two components, which is the construction of the training program, and then the execution of the program, and that's where all the feedback, the guidance, and the education comes in. So even someone like Chris that you mentioned earlier, Chris Standage, he will tell you that yes, all of our athletes sort of receive their training program, but then we really try and empower them, not just to be force-fed from me, the coach, this is what you should do, but empower them to understand why they're doing the training and how to make smart decisions. Because really, the hard thing in this sport is the knowledge component, the filter of the blizzard of, pardon my French, bullshit that's out there with so much information available. But what's really the high quality information? How do I filter it, and how do I apply it to my training? Because ultimately it can be very, very simple. And so we really try and enable and empower athletes to make smart decisions. And then with someone that I work with individually, and even my group, I have a really robust training squad in San Francisco. It is really about the mind, the belief, and athletes are different. They're human beings. And so with Jesse, it's real a collaborative conversation and setting the vision. With someone else, I have to be a bit more dictatorial. Someone else, very much more passive and supporting and nurturing. And so I think that's the real human element of coaching. And I've been very lucky that I've got to work with a lot of, interestingly, some very good business leaders, some CEOs and executives. And I think that I've learned a lot from those guys in different parts of life and how they're leaders, and try to apply that to sporting. So I don't always just look inside the sport for leadership, mental skills, and things along that line.
Oh, well, listen, I've learned a tremendous amount listening to you. I'm sure the listeners will have got a huge amount out of it as well. Just want to say thank you so much for giving up the time to come on the show. It's been a brilliant interview. You're one of the guys who I've really looked up to in coaching terms, and it's been great chatting with you. I'd love to get you back on the show sometime in the future, Matt, and continue the conversation if that would be possible.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, really, thanks ever so much. Enjoy the sunshine over in San Francisco, because we sure as hell haven't got any of it here in the UK at the moment.
Well, thanks so much. And just I hope everyone has a tremendous season, and hopefully yielded some nuggets of information. But, ultimately for amateurs, the last thing I'll say is that this sport doesn't have to dominate your life. It should be able to be integrated to make your big life even bigger. and that's your hope. So not to get all zappy and American on you, but hopefully we can all go on and have this be a big part of our lives. And Rob, thank you very, very much for having me on. I appreciate it greatly.
Well, thanks again, Matt. And if people want to find out more about Matt, they can go over to purplepatchfitness.com. Are you on Twitter as well, Matt?
I am. It's just Purple Patch, @PurplePatch.
Great stuff. Well, listen, thanks ever so much again.
Cheers, mate. Take care.
And there we go. There's our interview with Matt.
Fascinating, Rob. I
tell you what, we're getting to be a big name podcast now. We get Matt Dixon on. He was on like the Ironman. I was sitting there thinking, he's like on the Ironman coverage. When you watch the video,
it's so interesting listening to him, though. You can learn so much from him.
Yeah, and it's a cool story about going from being a pro triathlete himself to putting together a squad. Different, the fact that the weather's just a little bit better than we get in Great Britain, isn't it?
Only a little bit.
What do you think? Shall we move to San Francisco? Move ourselves to California.
Oh, goodness.
Stepping outside. A little bit easier to train than training in Knutsford in the wintertime, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. My goodness. It would. I think I'd just have to pinch myself every single day if I was out there, I think.
Well, that's what Emma Kate Libbury said when she was on. She was saying the difference in being able to just train outdoors all the time. I don't think she was actually based in San Francisco. She was down in Malibu, wasn't she?
She was down in, because she's not with Matt Dixon and Purple Patch Fitness anymore, but when she was,
that's right.
She was, first of all, based down in Southern California, then moved up to San Francisco, didn't she, for a little bit, and then she's moved back down to Southern California when she sort of stopped working with Purple Patch.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember her saying she was just
year-round sunshine.
Yeah.
They're onto something, Helen.
I think they are. Year-round sunshine and lots of vitamin D and some blooming hard graft as well, I'd say.
Yeah, mostly down to the hard graft, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. The sunshine and good coffee just kind of helps, doesn't it?
Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up. Thanks very much for listening. Listen to the Cup of Triathlon podcast. Now listen, you can really help us out if you wouldn't mind sharing the post on Facebook and on Twitter when we send it out, when we say the new show's up. Spreading the word really helps to grow the show. If you guys could leave us a review on iTunes, that'd help as well. If you can leave us a review on Stitcher, all of these little things are kind of building and building and building, and we're getting to the point now. Our audience is, do you know this, Hels? I was doing the audience numbers the other day. We're projecting something in the region of 30,000 downloads in the coming year.
Brilliant.
If we don't grow the podcast at all. So if we do, we could be up into the, who knows, 50, 60,000 downloads over the course of the year, which would be amazing.
Fantastic. Well, the more that you help us, hopefully, then the better that we can get as well. So, yeah, please do interact with us. We really like hearing from you. Again, you can leave Rob a message. And I say leave Rob because it doesn't go to me. It does directly go to him on oxygenaddict.com /podcast right up there. You can leave a 90-second audio message. We have had a few, and they're really good fun for us to hear. And also, you guys can, be part of the podcast as well. So don't forget.
Be famous for 90 seconds on the Cup of Tri podcast.
So don't forget about that as well. Any questions about training or whatever, do get in touch. Drop Rob an email, or you can ask us via Facebook or on Twitter. And we genuinely love hearing from you. So keep it coming.
And it'd also be cool, do you know what'd be great is if people came on, now you're starting to race, if any of your friends have had a good race this season and you want to get them mentioned on the Cup of Tri, just get onto the button, leave us a voice message, and as long as there's no swearing in it, or at least not too much swearing in it, we'll play it in the show for you to congratulate your friends on their race performances.
Deal.
All right, let's wrap it up there, Hels. It's been lovely talking to you. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Until next week, you've been listening to the Cup of Triathlon podcast. I'm Coach Rob Wilby.
I'm Helen Murray.
And we'll hopefully speak to you again next week. Thanks, everybody.